There's a lot of video game content that has been lost, either from being cancelled, being turned into different projects, or if it was a Flash game, it was lost after the shutdown of Adobe Flash. I think lost and cancelled video games are important as a part of video game history, so I compiled some cancelled/lost video game content. So, without further ado, let's get into it! Pokemon.com has had so many games over the years to promote the Pokemon franchise, and because a lot of them were developed using Adobe Flash, they unfortunately ended up becoming lost. While some of the more recent games were preserved and are playable on the Flashpoint archive, ones from earlier versions of the website from before its 2010 revamp are completely lost. We do actually have names and descriptions of these games, however. Switcheroo. This was a tile matching game themed around Pokemon Platinum. You had to swap tiles with Pokemon on them to match 3 in a row. Typical tile matching game, you know? The microsite of this game was saved partially on Flashpoint, but the game is still unplayable. Deep Sea Diving. This one was pretty simple. You had to find the names of certain water-type Pokemon. Unnamed Shuckle Game. So this one is interesting because it was actually a hidden game. You needed to enter an address to play it. There would be multiple Pokeballs on screen, and it would reveal all of them at the start, showing one with a shiny Shuckle and the rest with normal Shuckle. The Pokeballs would then be shuffled, and the player had to guess which one had the shiny Shuckle. The game contained 10 levels. Tricks of a Trainer. This was a quiz game where the player was given questions about the Hoenn region to answer. You obviously had to get them right to move on, and there were 5 questions. Grassamatas. This was a crossword game themed around grass-type Pokemon as well as moves. Wobbuffet's Puzzle Pack. This game was hosted by none other than the legend himself, Wobbuffet. The game consisted of different jigsaw puzzles. While the Japanese version is available on the Flashpoint archive, the English version is completely lost. Tic-Tac-Toe. This was another hidden game. It was multiplayer and 2 players can play tic-tac-toe with Swampert and Blaziken markers. Unnamed Rock-type Pokemon game. Another hidden game. Basically a simple matching game with Rock-type Pokemon cards. Play to befriend a Pokemon. This is the last game, and it was a promotional game. You could receive an evolution with its hidden ability intact through Pokemon Global Link, but you had to have a Trainer Club account to access this event. This game was removed when the promotion ended. Lost Flash games are honestly pretty interesting. Maybe it's just due to my nostalgia of Flash games though. With the Flashpoint archive, I can honestly see these getting found someday, and I hope they do. So not long after the release of the amazing Final Fantasy VII in 1997, a spin-off called Chocobo D Battle was in development. It was said to mostly be an arcade machine game, but allegedly there was going to be a PS1 port as well. It was going to be a fighting game starring the adorable Chocobos from FF7. The game was first announced in an issue of the Japanese magazine Famitsu sometime in 1997. And interestingly, instead of having the usual arcade controls, it would have had the player hover their hand over a motion sensor pad to control the Chocobo, which sounds like it would have been so awesome and honestly a bit ahead of its time. A tech demo was shown at SIGGRAPH 97, and there's a video available of what the demo looked like, and we get to see the motion sensor pad in action, which is so cool. Unfortunately though, there are no releases of any prototypes for this game, which is a bummer. I really hope more stuff regarding this game can be found. I love FF7 and I love the Chocobos, so seeing a game based off these goofy critters would be really rad, honestly. Darkspore was a 2011 action RPG developed by Maxis, and unfortunately published by EA. It was a sequel of sorts to their 2008 game Spore, but more dark and realistic, hence the name Darkspore. It was an online game that required EA's Origin app to run, and you also had to be connected to the internet even if you were playing on single-player mode. The game notably had a hero editor, which was similar to Spore's creature creator. The gameplay was also described as being quite similar to the Diablo series. Looking at the gameplay, it looked very cool and I'd definitely play it if it was still around. Unfortunately, in March of 2016, EA being EA, announced Darkspor's server shutdown. The shutdown was understandably met with backlash. Many journalists talked about how it was erasing a piece of video game history. Even if the game was downloaded before the shutdown and you're connected to the internet, it's still inaccessible. Reddit user ViderMM has been trying to access Darkspore after the game's shutdown since 2018. And he made a discovery. When he tried to boot the game, it would search for the domain where its bootstrap is. But the bootstrap was not there, therefore the game does not boot. He actually started a project called Darkspore LS, and him along with other programmers managed to gain access to the hero editor along with making the play button accessible, which leads to the login page. The single player mode is still not playable, unfortunately. I would love for this to be found as a Spore player, plus I like dark and realistic looking games as well, so this would be right up my alley. Castle Take is a lost arcade game that was released in 1978 exclusively in Japan and was developed by Sankyo. This game was basically a clone of Breakout, except it was themed around feudal Japan and you had to take over a pagoda. Pretty much a classic arcade game, you know? The game was advertised in Game Machine magazine, where we can see the design of the game's arcade cabinet. It also was later advertised in Beep Mega Drive magazine, and there they showed pictures of the ROM boards. The game also notably had great graphics for the late 70s, due to a more advanced graphical chip. The ROM for the game unfortunately has not been released online as of now, but there are allegedly still a few cabinets in Japanese arcades. Some Twitter users have posted their own pictures of the Castle Take cabinets where we can see some of the gameplay as well as the very 70s colorful looking cabinet. Sankyo unfortunately doesn't document anything about their early work, only their more recent pachinko machines. I would love to see a ROM dump of this, and hopefully we will get that someday. So funnily enough, this is another Sankyo arcade game, because like I said, they didn't document their earlier work. This game is also the successor to the previously mentioned Castle Take. Pyramid was released in 1978 and is also a Breakout clone, except it's Egyptian themed and features the King Tut mask, hieroglyphics, and snakes. There's actually a video of 43 seconds of gameplay from the Japanese TV show Game Center CX. A guy plays it until getting a game over. There was also allegedly a video that was posted on YouTube way back, but unfortunately it has been made private. A video of the game's attract mode is available on the site Nikozen, but still none of the actual gameplay. It's unclear how many units were made as it didn't seem to be very popular, very similar to its predecessor. Oh, and by the way, this is not the last Sankyo game on this list, so... Okay, this is the last Sankyo game on this list, I promise. Man, this company did not archive their early work well. Like at all. My goodness. Tag Play was released in 1979, a year after Castle Take and Pyramid. The gameplay was basically virtual tag. The player would use the controls to run around a maze and tag their opponents. Funnily enough, this predates Pac-Man by a year. I wonder if Namco was inspired by Tag Play. Probably not. Interestingly, in March 2023, a Twitter user by the name of Onion Software shared a photo of the game's flyer, which was not seen online at all until then. Only 2 pictures regarding this game exist online, the flyer and the manual. It's very unfortunate that so many games from Sankyo are lost. I think these games are important to arcade history and I would love to see these found and preserved. So chances are you guys know Kirby Air Ride, but you know that it's a GameCube game. But apparently, this game started development during the Nintendo 64 era. Originally called Kirby Bowl 64, the game started development in 1995 and was to be released on the N64. Very early development footage was shown at the Shoshinkai trade show in 1995, and it looked pretty different from its GameCube version. It originally was going to be an adventure racing game. The name was changed to Kirby's Air Ride at E3 1996, and there are several videos of advertisements showing footage from Kirby Bowl 64. No ROMs have been dumped of this build of the game, unfortunately, and the only footage of this build that we have are from the previously mentioned advertisements. And honestly, considering Nintendo and how they are about their games, I don't know how likely it would be that we get more of a glimpse at this build. So this one is pretty infamous and is a loss that is still felt throughout the horror gaming community. Silent Hills was a cancelled game developed by Kojima Productions that was first announced back in 2012. And a demo for the game was released in 2014. Known as Silent Hill PT, but was released as 7780 Studio. The player would finish the demo and it would be revealed that the game was a demo for a new Silent Hill game. I'll explain the gameplay a little bit, even though most of you probably already know what this game is because it dominated gaming YouTube when it came out. Basically, the player wanders around a very horrifying house and occasionally comes across Lisa. No, not Lisa Garland from Silent Hill 1, though I do want to know why there's two characters from the same franchise that have the same name. Anyway, a very angry pregnant woman spirit who can attack you at points. It really only happens if you turn around though. There's also a lot of theories about this game's story that are very interesting, honestly. Unfortunately, the demo would be removed from the PlayStation Store after Hideo Kojima was laid off by Konami. So pretty much anything from the development of the final game is just lost. Just completely lost. Nobody knew if the project was cancelled at first until the game's co-director, Guillermo del Toro, confirmed its cancellation in a YouTube video. While the demo is no longer downloadable, there are plenty of gameplay videos on YouTube of the full demo. Del Toro also mentioned a prototype that he was sent by Kojima that was pretty different from the demo we saw. People also speculate that the build that was shown at TGS was a prototype build, but this is unconfirmed. The cancellation of this game was very unfortunate to the horror gaming community, and there's a lot of alleged reasons for this cancellation, such as it being premeditated due to the feud between Kojima and Konami. But, we are not getting into that. Crash Tag Team Racing was a game released in 2005 for multiple platforms such as the PlayStation 2, GameCube, Xbox, and the PlayStation Portable. It was developed by the previously mentioned Radical Entertainment. I've personally never played it, but it looks pretty rad. There was actually a DS port that was in development. It obviously wouldn't be directly ported to the DS due to the technical limitations of the handheld. This port was being developed by Sensory Sweep. They also had help from Radical Entertainment and tasked them with scaling down the character models to fit into the DS version. And they actually ended up making whole new character models for the DS version after attempting to scale down the existing ones and them not looking that good. This port was in development for about 10 months until it was cancelled. The reason was because Mario Kart DS was set to be released close to when this port was going to be released. So Sierra Entertainment was convinced the game just wouldn't sell well going up against Mario Kart DS. Which I agree with. I mean, anything Mario related is just going to beat anything else in sales that comes out around the same time. Some people also speculate that there was management issues between Sierra Entertainment and Sensory Sweep. Some pictures of development material were posted back in 2014, showing character models, hubs, and tracks made for the DS version. These were posted by an anonymous Crash Bandicoot fan. Unfortunately, this is all that's been found from the DS version of Crash Tag Team Racing as of this video. I hope someday more can be uncovered about this port. Crash Landed was a cancelled platformer game for the Nintendo DS, PS3, Xbox 360, and the Wii. The Nintendo DS version was being developed by Renegade Kid, while the PS3/Xbox 360/Wii version was being developed by Radical Entertainment. It was unfortunately cancelled when good old Activision laid off the whole development team, because that's Activision's favorite thing to do. The plot for Crash Landed revolved around Crash rescuing not yet mutated bandicoots from danger. Notably, Dingodile would have been a main villain in the game, which I think would have been pretty rad. Because I mean, like, who doesn't love Dingodile?
Break out the butter. Got on my toast.
Footage of a prototype/demo level of Renegade Kid's DS version was found, but unfortunately no footage of Radical Entertainment's version has been found as of 2026. Katamari Damacy is a pretty well-known puzzle action game series. I've played the first game and some of the second, and it's very fun and creative. Catchy music as well. There's an online multiplayer game for the series called Katamari Damacy Online Roll It Prince. It was released in February of 2010 and was a collaboration between Namco and South Korean studio Windy Stuff. It was a South Korea exclusive game and had a lot of things added to it that were never in the other Katamari games. The game seemed to have a troubled development. The game started development in 2006 and didn't get an actual announcement until 2007. And 2 years later, in 2009, they would reveal more information. They had a map based on Seoul, and there was 2 new cousins named Mint and Mellow. There's also some updates that added microtransactions, unfortunately. And after that, a tutorial section and practice mode would be added. And then lastly, some single-player modes were added. Quick Mode, Great Mode, and Special Mode. This game had various collaborations with brands such as Chupa Chups, Pringles, and a Korean makeup brand called Etude House. Unfortunately, Katamari Damacy Online would be shut down in February of 2012. Thankfully, though, there are plenty of gameplay videos and official art available online. Assets were actually found in 2015. One of the developers for the game, a user named Volky412, posted images of layouts and textures. It really sucks that this game was a South Korean exclusive. It looks so fun, and I would definitely play it. Simsville was going to be a crossover game between SimCity and The Sims that was going to be developed by Maxis and published by EA. Development started in 2000 and was announced at E3 a year later in 2001. It had a set release date for 2002. There was a trailer released not only for the E3 demo, but also for The Sims Live and Large and SimCity 3000 Unlimited CDs. This game was basically Sims in the big city. You could expand the world with buildings, shops, etc. Though a significant difference is that you would satisfy the needs and wants of the Sims rather than controlling them, which honestly seems not as fun in my opinion, but that's just me. I play a Sims game, I usually play it for the appeal of controlling these silly little characters I created, but also letting them do their own things sometimes, like burn the food they were trying to make and get all pissed off for the rest of the day. Unfortunately, the game would be cancelled in September 2001 due to Maxis and EA deciding to focus on making expansions for The Sims instead. However, Maxis would incorporate concepts from the cancelled crossover in future Sims expansions and games. Unfortunately, no builds of Simsville have been released. The only remnants of it are its trailers and various screenshots. This was a promotional game and series of minigames featuring Spyro and Crash for Nabisco, and was meant to promote Spyro Orange, Cortex Conspiracy, and Crash Bandicoot Purple, Ripto's Rampage, that released on the Game Boy Advance that year. For this promotion, they released Nabisco products with marked packages that also contained Spyro or Crash-themed cards. These cards had codes that could be used to redeem minigames on candystand.com. When the promotion ended in April of 2005, the game and its minigames were made inaccessible. Thankfully, the main game and the Crash minigames were found via a developer of the games and eventually were able to be played again on the Flashpoint archive. Unfortunately, all the Spyro minigames are still lost, and we also don't know what a lot of the code cards looked like either. There's only 22 of them that were actually found. It was actually stated that there was over 90 plus different cards, so that's not a lot that was found. I always find lost Flash games like these interesting, so hopefully the rest of this promotion can be found someday. Final Fantasy VII Before Crisis was a Japanese exclusive mobile RPG that was released for the FOMA 900i in 2004. You had to subscribe to a service called Final Fantasy Mobile to obtain this game. The plot revolved around the Turks and took place before the events of Final Fantasy VII. It featured returning characters from Final Fantasy VII as well as new ones, all with their own backstories. The Turks were investigating Avalanche and their plans to probably blow up a reactor like the Avalanche we know and love. The game ended up being a success, so as more mobile phone models came out in Japan, versions released for those phones too. The game also became available for AU, Easy, Web, and Yahoo in 2017. Unfortunately, Square Enix would end up discontinuing the Final Fantasy mobile service in 2018, so the game would end up unplayable even if the player already had it downloaded. A gameplay series of the full game is available on YouTube, however, the game is still not playable. This game looked very cool, and I think it was a fantastic idea to make a game based on the Turks. They were kind of mysterious in FF7, and this game fleshed them out more, and I think that's pretty important for the world of FF7. So hopefully, this piece of FF7 history can be made playable again. Twelve Tales Conquer 64 was the original version of Conker's Bad Fur Day. Developed by Rare, Conquer 64 was going to be your typical family-friendly Nintendo 64 platformer. It was announced at E3 1997. It was not well received as people thought it was way too similar to Banjo-Kazooie. In response, Rare canceled the game. There was 30 minutes of gameplay uploaded to YouTube in 2012, showing a few different things. It showed Conker in areas that weren't present in the final game, such as a desert-type area and a gladiator arena. There is also a gameplay clip showing the character Barry being playable. Instead of facing monsters, she would be able to call monsters directly to help her. In 2023, Tim Stamper, the co-founder of Rare, revealed he had a working development cartridge. He posted footage to Twitter of the title sequence. Unfortunately, no ROM was dumped though. Hopefully someday, more of this game can be shown off. I think seeing a more family-friendly version of Conker is very interesting considering it was changed into a very raunchy adult-oriented game. So there was a cancelled Castlevania game for the Sega 32X called Castlevania: The Bloodletting. It was cancelled due to the unfortunate failure of the 32X. The only thing that was left of it publicly were some sprites made for the planned game, Richter Belmont, Maria, and an unknown character. Interestingly, this game was most likely turned into the PlayStation and Sega Saturn classic Castlevania Symphony of the Night, due to the game also including Richter Belmont and Maria. There was also an advertisement in a Konami brochure for CES 95 for the game, but it also mentions this game releasing for the PlayStation and Sega Saturn. And as I previously mentioned, Symphony of the Night released on these consoles. So it's a possibility this was basically an early version of the game, but we unfortunately have no idea. Well, yet. Come Midnight was being developed by studio People Can Fly, for the PlayStation and Xbox 360. The game took place in the 1940s, and the plot revolves around a detective who is able to communicate with the dead. A tech demo was made and shown to various major publishers, but unfortunately, none of them were interested. However, THQ had offered to pick it up, but the game was unexpectedly canceled due to People Can Fly not having enough revenue from their previous project to continue. The game was nearly finished when it was canceled. In 2020, there was some gameplay footage of Come Midnight released by Adrian, this last name that I'm not even gonna try to pronounce, the co-founder of People Can Fly, showing an unfinished demo. It looks very fun and I really like the art direction here. I love how of the time the house looks, as well as the detective's outfit. There's a YouTube video showcasing some cool concept art for the game as well. The cancellation of this game is a real bummer. You could probably tell, but I love me a good survival horror game. They can be really fun and even unsettling at times. I'm glad some stuff from the game was found. Hopefully someday we'll get the full prototype. So, there was a planned third game for the infamously awful Bubsy series. It was called Bubsy 3, No More Mr. Nice Guy. The concepts were created by Mark Eilis and were going to be released for multiple consoles such as the Sega Saturn, Sega Genesis, and the PS1. Images Software was shown Mark's concepts, and they were a big fan. Development was most likely started in 1994, but it's hard to tell considering Images Software went defunct in 1995. But it was somewhere between 1993 and 1995. 1993 is when Bubsy 2 was released. Back in 2016, Nintendo Age user Steven78 posted screenshots of an alleged title screen as well as some code for a demo of Bubsy 3 onto a thread about unreleased Sega Saturn games. It was never confirmed if this was real or not, unfortunately. I feel like we can safely assume this game would have also been bad like the previous two Bubsy games, but I still think it would be kinda interesting to see this found. Welp, that's all for this video. All of these entries were very interesting to research, and I honestly would love to see all of these found in some way and properly archived. Which entry do you want to be found the most? I think for me, it's gotta be Darkspore, as well as Come Midnight. Come Midnight just seems so interesting, and I love that it's a survival horror game that takes place in, like, you know, the olden days. Darkspore would be a game I would definitely play because I play Spore already, and a darker version would just be right up my alley. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts about it in the comments and if you think I should have mentioned any other lost video game content. I hope you have an awesome day and I'll see you next time. Bye!